All right, so today we're diving deep, right? Getting into the nitty-gritty of how folks see their work in the world, making a difference and all that. We're zeroing in on this group, Ideas.
The International Community Development NGO.
That's the one. We've got their chart-broken four-way PDF thingy, that explanation document, and some stuff straight from their website. The mission here is to really get a feel for their whole approach to what they call faithful work.
Right on. So Ideas, they're this community of professionals all about their Christian faith and super into something they call holistic community development.
Okay, holistic, got it. But what does that actually look like in the real world?
Well, they work in a bunch of different areas: agriculture, health, education, disability services, you name it. They even tackle human trafficking.
Whoa, that's a lot. But there's got to be some kind of common thread running through all of that, right?
Absolutely. Their whole philosophy boils down to these three things: being, doing, and saying.
Interesting. Being, doing, saying, that's kind of catchy. But how do we actually unpack that?
Well, that's where this graphic comes in. It was created by Missy Wallace and Lauren Gill. This thing's super insightful. It basically lays out all these different ways people engage with the world through their work,
Yeah.
Based on two fundamental scales.
Two scales. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
All right, so picture this. You've got this chart, right, with a horizontal line and a vertical line.
Classic XY axis situation.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What do they represent, though?
Okay, so the horizontal one, that represents awareness of broken systems, like how much someone recognizes the problems and inequalities baked into the systems around us. It goes from low awareness on one side to high awareness on the other.
Okay, broken systems makes sense. But what would low awareness even look like practically?
Someone with low awareness might genuinely think society's doing pretty all right. They see things as generally fair and just, with good opportunities for most people.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of vibe.
Exactly. They might think if you just work hard enough, you can achieve anything, and that the system, supports that.
Right. The system works if you work it.
And this is another way low awareness can play out. They might think it's not really a Christian's job to try and fix those systems. The world's messed up, sure, but it's all going to get sorted out eventually, so why bother?
So one hand, you've got faith in the system, and on the other, you've got faith that the system is ultimately temporary anyway.
Interesting. Okay, but what about the other end of that spectrum? What makes someone highly aware of these broken systems?
Now, this is where things get really fascinating. With high awareness, you see all the cracks in the system, the exploitation, the inequality, the lack of opportunity for so many people. Think about it. What are some recent headlines that highlight those broken systems? Where do things fall apart?
Yeah, you don't have to look far to see those injustices, that's for sure. So high awareness means seeing those problems clearly. And often, they feel like they're called to do something about it, to actively address those broken systems. They see that as a core part of their faith.
It's not enough to just preach the gospel. You've got to actually live it out by fighting for justice.
Exactly. And that can take a lot of forms. You know how Ideas works to combat human trafficking?
Yeah, they're not just rescuing individuals. They're trying to dismantle the whole system that allows trafficking to flourish. Okay, so we've covered that horizontal axis, the awareness of broken systems. But what about that vertical line?
Okay, so the vertical axis, that represents awareness of personal brokenness.
So now we're turning inward, looking at how much someone recognizes their own flaws, their own need for something more, right?
Exactly. Just like with systems, there's a spectrum here, from low awareness to high awareness.
Okay, break it down for me. What does low awareness of personal brokenness look like?
Someone with low awareness, they tend to think they're pretty much okay. They see themselves as good people, kind, generous, and all that.
The I'm a good person, I try my best type.
Exactly. They might think they've got life figured out, that their successes are all thanks to their own efforts. They don't really see a need for outside help or major personal transformation.
The self-made person. Okay, I see that. And what about the other end of that spectrum? The high awareness folks.
Now, high awareness of personal brokenness, that's where you find people who have this deep sense of their own need for help, for a savior, They recognize their flaws, their need for forgiveness, and they see a need for a real, heart transformation.
So it's not just about being a good person on the surface, but about recognizing a deeper need for change.
Right. It's a much more profound sense of humility, a recognition of our own limitations, and our need for something bigger than ourselves.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. We've got these two scales, one about our view of the world's systems, and the other about our view of ourselves. But where do they intersect? How do these two awarenesses interact?
Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. When you bring these two axes together, you get four distinct quadrants. Each of those quadrants represents a different way people approach their work, their purpose in the world.
All right, let's dive into these quadrants. Starting bottom left, low awareness of personal brokenness and low awareness of broken systems. What's the focus there?
That one's labeled focus on self-fulfillment. Basically, people in this quadrant are operating in a world where they think things are mostly fine. Their work is likely driven by personal ambition and satisfaction. It's about achieving their own goals and feeling good about it.
Makes sense. If you don't see any major problems, why not focus on your own success? Okay, let's move to the top left. High awareness of personal brokenness, but low awareness of broken systems. What's going on there?
That's the focus on evangelism and ethical behavior quadrant. Here, we're talking about people who are acutely aware of their own need for change, for salvation. They're all about personal transformation. However, they don't necessarily see those same problems reflected in the systems around them. So their focus is on individual change, spreading their faith, and living a moral life within those existing structures.
So their work is more about saving souls and being a good example within a system they see as mostly okay.
Exactly. It's about individual morality and personal change within a world they don't necessarily feel a need to radically overhaul.
Got it. Okay, bottom right. Low awareness of personal brokenness, but high awareness of broken systems. What's the name of the game in that quadrant?
This one's labeled focus on social impact. So people here are really attuned to the injustices and problems in the world around them. They're passionate about social justice and making things better for everyone.
So they're all about fixing the world out there, but maybe not so focused on fixing themselves.
That's one way to put it. They might not see their own personal growth as central to their mission, but they definitely see the need for big systemic changes.
That's super interesting. Okay, last but not least, the top right quadrant. High awareness of personal brokenness and high awareness of broken systems. What's the deal with this one?
This, my friend, is where we find holistic gospel work. And I think it's safe to say that this is the quadrant Ideas operates from.
Okay, so tell me, what does holistic actually mean in this context?
People in this quadrant, they understand that personal transformation and systemic change are intertwined. They see their own need for growth, for grace, and they see the brokenness of the world around them. They're working to address both at the same time.
It's not either, it's both hand.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our personal journeys and the systems we live in are constantly shaping each other.
Which perfectly aligns with Ideas' whole mission, right? To help people and communities flourish by removing those barriers to dignity, like they say on their website.
Absolutely. It's not just about meeting immediate needs. It's about addressing the underlying systems that create those needs in the first place.
Yeah, like with their community development work, it's not just about giving handouts, it's about listening to the community, empowering people, and addressing the power imbalances that keep them marginalized.
Right. And their anti-trafficking efforts, they're not just focused on rescuing victims, but also on educating communities and addressing the factors that make people vulnerable to trafficking in the first place.
It's about getting to the root of the problem, not just treating the symptoms.
Exactly. And you see that same holistic approach in all their work. In agriculture, they're working on sustainable farming practices, addressing issues of food security and poverty, while also empowering individual farmers. In disability services, they're breaking down social barriers, while also providing direct support to individuals. They're tackling systemic issues while meeting immediate needs.
And even their partnerships with other organizations, it's all about bringing expertise where it's needed most, creating this ripple effect of change that touches individuals and systems alike.
Right. They're all about maximizing impact.
Speaking of impact, they shared that story on their website about Alma in Guatemala.
Oh yeah, Alma. She was born with spina bifida, and she faced so much isolation and rejection. It wasn't just about addressing her medical needs, it was about restoring her dignity and helping her find her place in the community.
That story really embodies their whole approach, removing barriers to dignity.
And it all stems from their core values. They're very upfront about their love for Jesus and their commitment to following his example. They ground their work in historic Christian faith. They even mention things like the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed.
Yeah, and the five solas, don't forget the five solas. And they even reference the National Association of Evangelicals' Statement of Faith.
Right. So they're not just out there doing good deeds. They have a very clear theological foundation for their work.
It all comes back to that idea of meeting needs. changing hearts that
Yeah.
they talk about so much. It's about practical action and spiritual transformation happening together.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
understand that you can't separate those two things, that they work together to bring about real lasting change.
Okay, so this framework of awareness of personal brokenness and broken systems, it's pretty insightful, right? It helps us understand not just ideas approach, but also how other people and organizations might be approaching their work in the world.
Totally. It's like a lens for understanding different worldviews and approaches to tackling those big challenges we're all facing.
And I think it also challenges us as listeners to think about our own place in all of this.
Where would you place yourself on those two scales? How aware are you of the brokenness in the world? And how aware are you of your own personal brokenness?
Right, it's a question we all need to wrestle with. Because understanding where we stand on those scales can really shape how we approach our own work, our own purpose in the world.
Absolutely. It's about becoming more self-aware and more aware of the world around us.
And maybe, just maybe, it can help us move toward a more holistic way of engaging with the world, a way that recognizes the interconnectedness of personal transformation and systemic change.
Food for thought, right?
Definitely. Something to ponder as we go about our day, our week, our lives.